Hey, welcome to our video on direct variation and inverse variation. If we look at direct variation, here's the equation y equals kx, and k does not equal 0. And you've kind of worked with direct variation before, where you see this. Sometimes you'll work with equations like this, y equals mx plus b, but we sometimes have problems where b is equal to 0, so instead of having plus 0, we just cancel it out. And so therefore, these two equations will be the same. And the slope is going to be k. And down here for inverse variation, the equation xy equals k. And sometimes you will see the equation, people will have y all by itself. So in order to get y by itself, the opposite of multiplying by x is dividing by x. You divide by x. So y is equal to k over x. Sometimes they'll have those as the equations, and when we find the equation, we'll write it like that. But both ways, you should remember, you should know that if you remember this, you can change it to y equals k over x fairly quickly by dividing by x. So, those are the important parts that you should remember from this section. And of course, as always, you can graph those. Y equals kx can be graphed by, it's kind of like y equals mx plus b, except b is 0, so your first point is right there, 0, 0, and then whatever the slope is. Usually it's going to be, who knows, it can look like this, or just any type of graph like that. And then y over kx, that one's a little bit different. It's probably not in any form that you know right off the top of your head to graph fairly easily. So you'll probably want to maybe make a table, an x, y table, and pick a few values and then find the values for y. But you do have to know what k is in order to do that. So let's move on to some type of problems that you'll be working with, some things you'll be asked to do when dealing with direct and inverse variation. First off, you got to remember these formulas. You got to remember the formulas. And then from there, everything should be easy. It's just substitution and solving. Let's look at this first example. The variables x and y vary directly. And that right there is your hint, directly. Y is equal to k times x. Use the given values to write an equation that relates x and y. If x equals 4 and y equals 8. Well, you know, since they vary directly, this is the equation you're using. You'll substitute 4 in for x and 8 in for y. And what your whole goal is to try and solve for k. You have to solve for k, and then you can write an equation that says y is equal to whatever you found for k, and then x comes after it. So let's look here. If we're multiplying k by 4, we want to get it by itself by dividing by 4. And the 4's on the right side cancel off, and 8 divided by 4 is 2. So k is equal to 2. And then we'll take it and plug it in. Y is equal to k times x is the equation. So y is equal to 2x. Is the equation that you're asked to right that relates x and y. Y equals 2x. Let me see if you can go ahead and do this one. This one's exactly the same. You're going to get a fraction here, and you are allowed to get fractions on these ones. So you go ahead and pause the video, try and work out exactly the same as the last example, because it varies directly. Since it varies directly, y equals kx, x equals 18, y equals 3. Trying to get k by itself, so we divide by 18 on both sides, and k is equal to, well, 3 over 18, 3 over 18, divide the top by 3, divide the bottom by 3, and we get 1 over 6. So k is equal to 1 over 6. Told you to write in an equation, so we're going to say y is equal to k times x. K is 1/6. And there's your equation. Y equals 1/6 x. Let's look here at the next one. The variables x and y vary inversely. Inversely, that's a little bit different than what we're used to. We've been dealing with directly. When you hear inversely, xy equals k. Use the given values to write the equation that relates x and y. Okay, so we need to figure out what k is before we can write an equation, because all equations need to have x and y in it. So let's look this up. So x times y is equal to k. X is 16, y is 3/4. So just multiply. We have 16 over 1 times 3 over 4. I know 4 goes into 4 and 4 goes into 16, so I can go ahead and reduce those now. How many times does 4 go into 16? 4 times. And how many times on the bottom does 4 go into 4? Once. So multiplying straight across, we have 4 times 3, which is 12, and 1 times 1, which is 12 over 1, which is just 12. And that is equal to k. This is an equation that varies. This is an equation that inversely varies x and y. Probably most of the time you're going to see it as y is equal to 12 over x. Either way, just remember we just divided by x and divided by x, and the x is canceled. That's the reason why I have this down here on the bottom. Y is equal to 12 over x. Or xy equals 12. Probably the bottom way is the way that you're going to see it in inch choices, and most of the time, just for the simple fact that y is equal to something, and that's how I guess most equations are usually written. Either way is fine. Either way is fine. Either way would be correct. Let's see if you can do this one on your own. This is the variables x and y vary inversely, and that is your key. X times y is equal to k. And write an equation that relates x and y. Pause the video, then you go ahead and try this on your own. So we know x times y is equal to k. X is 4, y is 2/3. How do we multiply these? Well, we have 4 over 1 times 2/3. That's equal to k. I can't reduce the 3 with the 2 or the 3 with the 4, so we just have to multiply straight across. 4 times 2 is 8. 1 times 3 is 3. And so that's k. So we're going to have x times y is equal to k. X times y is equal to 8 over 3. And remember, they like to have the equation as y is equal to something. So let's divide it by x, and we divide by x. Well, we know if we have 8 over 3 divided by x and divided by x over 1, that's the same thing as saying 8 over 3 times 1 over x. You multiply by the reciprocal. Let me go ahead and get this out of the way, and you can work this out straight across. 8 over 3x. And so therefore y is equal to 8 over 3x. Okay? This is just a different way of wording the question. Assume that y varies directly. Directly is your key. Assume that y varies directly as x, and y equals 27 when x equals 9. What is the direct variation equation for the situation? So it's asking for direct variation, which is y equals k times x. Y is 27. X is 9. How do you get k by itself? You divide by 9. Divide by 9. K equals 3. So y is equal to 3 times x. And that's your equation. Plug it in there for k. You just have to pay attention. The key here is to pay attention to how x and y vary. Look here. Assume that y varies inversely as x, and y is 1/2 when x is 12. What is the inverse variation equation for the situation? So go ahead and see if you can work this out and come up with the answer. I will check your solution here in one moment. Actually, you'll check your own solution. xy is equal to k. That's inverse variation. So x is 12, y is 1/2. So I know 12 times 1 is 12, 1 times 2 is 2, and 12 over 2 is 6. So therefore k is equal to 6. X times y is equal to 6. That's the equation. Or if you needed to get y by itself, you divided both sides by x, and that leaves you with y is equal to 6 over x. Both of those are inverse variation equations. Given the direct variation equation, y is equal to k times x, in which y is equal to 20 when x is equal to 5. What is y when x equals 7.5? Okay, so this has a couple steps to it. It says, what is y? You're not trying to find an equation anymore. This doesn't tell you, say, what is an equation when x is something and y is a different value. This is now asking, this is saying y is 20, x equals 5, and they vary directly. So give me a value for y when x is 7.5. So we got to go through a couple different steps. First off, we don't pay attention to this part right here. What we have to do is we have to use these values to write a direct variation equation. Use those values to write a direct variation equation. So step one, write an equation. So y equals kx. It is direct variation, so this is the equation we're using. Y is 20, x is 5. So what is the value of k? K is 4. 20 divided by 5 is 4. Now we have to write an equation, so that's going to be y is equal to 4x. We substituted in for k. Step number 2 is now this last part. What is y when x is 7.5? Find y when x equals 7.5. So let's use this equation. Y is equal to 4 times x. What do we know x is? 7.5. You cannot multiply. Oh, I guess you could if you could do this in your head. I'm going to show you how to do it without doing it in your head. Let's say we have 4 over 1 and we're multiplying it by 7.5. We need to change 7.5 to an improper fraction. So we have 2 times 7, which is 14, plus 1, which is 15, and then 15 over 2. So that's how you change a mixed number to an improper fraction. Now we have 4 over 1 times 15 over 2. I know 2 goes into both 4 and 2. So 2 goes into 4 twice. 2 goes into 2 once. And now I can multiply this straight across. 2 times 15 is 30. 1 times 1 is 1. And I don't need to put that on the bottom of 30 because 30 over 1 is just 30. So let me get rid of some of this and get back to what we're working on. Drop down 4 times 7.5. We calculated to be 30. And that's what y is equal to. Question said, what is y? Y equals 30 when x is 7.5. So there's a couple steps here that you had to do for that one. So first step, just always remember, write an equation. Once you get that equation, you use it to find y. Let me see if you can go ahead and do this one on your own. It's just like the last problem, which has 2 steps, other than the fact that you're going to use the inverse variation equation to find y. So go ahead and try this on your own, and then check it with mine. We're going to do step 1, which is write an equation. So we know x times y is equal to k. Y is 5. X is 3. So that means 15 is k. So our equation, x times y is equal to 15, or divide both sides by x. Y is equal to 15 divided by x. Either one of those. Step 2. Step 2 says, what is y when x equals 8? What is y when x equals 8? So if we're trying to find y, I'm going to use the second equation because y is already all by itself. Y is equal to 15 over x. And in this case, x is 8. So y is 15 over 8. And you can leave it like this unless your answer choice wants you to change it to a mixed number. So in that case, you'll say, how many times does 8 go into 15? Goes into it once. That would be 8. Now subtract. 15 minus 8 is 7. So you have 1 and 7/8. Either one of those would be the solution depending on how your answer was supposed to be. Well, that is all we have for inverse and direct variation. The most important element of this is to remember your equations, and everything goes smoothly after that. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.